Thanks for watching. Michelangelo said the true work of art is but a shadow of the divine perfection. And it's amazing to me that such a master who painted the frescoes that he did in the Sistine Chapel and all, that with his brain operating 400 billion bits of information per second that the brain processes, a body having 75 trillion to 100 trillion cells, that somehow the artist himself, with that kind of complexity, didn't have a creator or designer, and yet we would look at the ceiling that he painted and say certainly paint exploding in some random fashion didn't do that. It took an artist. Oh my gosh, good grief. But anyway, back to this concept of the credibility of the Bible. That's what I would like to talk about again, is that the Bible is amazing and that some people would push that book aside and not even give it a second thought, and I think that is foolish. And again, the Bible does say the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Sir Isaac Newton said, no sciences are better attested than the religion of the Bible. I agree with Isaac Newton. Again, this book, 66 books, 40 different authors, written over a period of 1,600 years, men of all and women of all different walks of life, yet there's a consistent trail of thought, redemption of mankind by a loving and yet just God, written throughout the Bible. An amazing book. We talked about some of the archaeological evidence that substantiates the historical credibility of the Old Testament and New Testament. We talked about the bibliographic quality, the quantity and quality of the texts and their preservation over time of copying and recopying. And this book is unparalleled, and yet a lot of people will discard it without a second thought. And I would have to question, do they really want to know truth in doing so? To me, one of the greatest evidences of the credibility of the Bible, though, is its prophetic words. Anybody can write a book, but if you can write a book that tells the future accurately, well, that's pretty amazing. And we find in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there are many prophecies focused on the coming of a Messiah, a Savior. And I want to focus on a few of those for just a moment, and then look at prophecies that are current and some yet to be fulfilled. In Isaiah the prophet, Isaiah wrote approximately 700 BC, we read about the sign of the virgin birth. In Micah 5:2, it says that this Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. In Jeremiah 23, it would be a descendant of King David. The Jews kept very fastidious genealogical records. It was extremely important to them. It says the Messiah would be a descendant of King David. In Isaiah 9, it says that he would be referred to as Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, and of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end. Isaiah 42 said he would heal the blind, set captives free, bring justice to the oppressed, and become a light for the Gentiles. Zechariah 11 said he would be sold for 30 pieces of silver. Isaiah 52 and 53 speak of his rejection by the people and the sufferings he would undergo. I'm going to read a few quotes from there. In Isaiah 52 it says, see, my servant will act wisely, he will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted, just as there were many who were appalled at him. His appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any man, and his form marred beyond human likeness. So will he sprinkle many nations, and kings will shut their mouths because of him. For what they were not told they will see, and what they have not heard they will understand. It says in Isaiah 53 in the next chapter that he would have nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering, like one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Verse 5, but he was crushed for our transgressions, pierced for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. It said he would be oppressed and afflicted, yet not open his mouth to defend himself. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and who can speak of his descendants. Remember, Jesus didn't defend himself in his own trial. And it says that who can speak of his descendants? He wouldn't have any children. For he was cut off from the land of the living, killed. For the transgression of my people, he was stricken. He was assigned a grave with the wicked. Remember, he died in the presence of criminals, crucified between two criminals. And with the rich in his death, he was put in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the ruling council of the Sanhedrin. Though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth, yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hands. It was God's idea to put Jesus to death. As Jesus said, no one takes my life from me. I lay it down of my own accord. So it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. Yes, it was the corrupt Jewish Sanhedrin. Most of the common people loved Jesus, but the Sanhedrin were power-hungry, mafia kind of people. Anyway, they put him to death. Yes, the Romans put him to death. But ultimately it was God's idea. And this is prophesied 700 years BC. And listen to this in verse 11. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. The resurrection. He would rise from the dead. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Therefore I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life to death and was numbered with the transgressors. For he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. This is an amazing prophecy. This is nothing you can blow off easily. We know historically many of the experiences of Jesus' life and his death from both biblical and extra-biblical historical sources. We can't deny this stuff. Psalm 22, when Jesus died on the cross, the Gospels record that he cried out, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? From Psalm 22, 1000 BC, the prophet there foretold that he would be surrounded by a band of evil men, that all his bones would be, he says, I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is turned to wax, it is melted away within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. A band of evil men has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. They gambled. In other words, cast lots meant gambled for his clothing. And that's what they did at the foot of the cross. You can't dismiss this book very easily.